Hey everyone, I hope you are well. Thank you for tuning in to this demo. Today I will be going over values and light logic on a sphere. So if you are an avid watcher of my channel, you already know that I have a sphere video where I completely render it out and talk about light logic and values. But in this demo, I wanted to redo this video for my class at CAC. I wanted to gear this demo to them. So today I will go over a lecture in class about light logic, value, but in this demo, I really want to just go over steps. I feel like young artists tend to don't realize that there's steps to rendering. There's that they're juggling more than one thing when they're rendering. So there is about 6 steps that we're going to go through in this demo, and I really want to focus on not only light logic. I want to focus on step 1 really is linear structure. So if you see right now, I already have my drawing down. I did a very structural sphere, starting with a geometric shape of a square, and then I got my sphere down as well as my casting shadow, and also a shadow edge that's here as well. So the next step is separating light mass from dark mass, which I've already kind of got in. This is my light mass, this is my dark mass. And then we're going to focus on local value. Local value, I'm going to stress it because I feel like students don't really see local value and they don't quite understand it, or they don't really pay attention to it. And then we'll move into light logic and value and just distributing values. Also, edges are very important. Edges are one of those things that kind of get lost in translation sometimes with students. It's very important to have a variety or economy of edges. Very, very important. So we're going to go ahead and just get started. There are going to be charts that I'm going to insert into this video, as well as I'm going to insert the actual sphere that I'm actually drawing. So I'm actually drawing a red sphere, and I'm doing that for the purpose of local value because I want to stress that. And so we're going to go ahead and get started. There is some few things that I will discuss when I plug in my inserts, but step 1, which I already talked about, we're going to get the linear structure down. So that's getting the drawing down in its construction. So I've already done that. I also at the bottom have a 5-step value scale. So of course our first step is white, then we get a little bit darker, a little bit more darker. This is our mid-tone, number 3, and then we get to our 4th and 5th, where you can see that they're slowly gradating to black, or gradating to a darker value. So this is here, that way students can have an idea of what these values look like. So when you're drawing, you can always pull up a value scale on your phone. You can always do that if you're not familiar with values. So it's always good to kind of have it there. That way you're paying attention to where you're placing your values. So step 1, once again, is linear structure. We got it down. Step 2 is separate light mass from dark mass. So once again, I've done that. So step 3 is local value. So local value is very important. It is the actual color of an object. This color has a local value. So for example, if something is red, which I'm doing a red sphere, the local value is a 5. Or if something is yellow, let's say you have a yellow sphere, the local value is 2 or 3. So it's very important to think about the local value, like what is the actual hue of the object that I'm drawing and rendering and placing light logic rules on. So that's very, very important. And then I'm going to keep it right here because I've already done step 1 and 2 and 3. And also step 3 and step 2 can be swapped. And I'm going to show you that right now in a demo. So of course, I did separate my light mass from my dark mass, but I'm going to lose this shadow edge that's here. I'm going to definitely lose that because I really want to focus on getting the local value down and just focus on that. So I'm going to come in And I'm going to erase some of my construction lines that I have here. And if I can, you guys, I'm going to try my best to fast forward through whatever I need to fast forward. That way it's not a prolonged video. I'm just erasing out some of these lines, which they will definitely disappear once I start rendering, but I just want to get them at least down to a ghost. And when I mean ghost, I just mean I want to see them, but I don't want them to be dominant lines. So of course today, I didn't even talk about that. I'm using graphite. So as you can see, this is my Tombow pencils. I love Tombow because they're pretty gray. I have to switch over to another pencil to get really, really rich darks like this. Alright, so what I'm going to do is, this is something completely different because I normally go first into separating light part from dark part, but since I want to focus on local value, I'm definitely going to start with focusing on what is the actual value of my sphere. I know I have a red sphere, so that means I'm going to try to get to that number 3 that's here. So I'm going to lose my shadow edge, and that's fine. I can always draw it back in. So I'm blocking in my cast shadow as well. So I'm going to shade over this whole shape. So right now I'm worried about local value. So as of right now, I am not at this value right now. So I'm going to try to get to either that value or at least close to this value. Alright, so now I'm going to draw back in my shadow edge. Now that I have my shadow edge in, I'm going to go back into my shadow side because I want to separate my light part from my dark part. So first we had our linear structure. Second, we establish what is our local value. Third, I'm going to separate light part from dark part. So once again, this can completely be opposite. 3 and 2 can be 2 and 3. Those steps can happen. So because I have a red sphere, I want to start with those local values that's there. I just want to start with that. So now I can come in and block out my shadow side. So I've lost some of my drawing, and I'm okay with that because I can always draw it back in. Alright, you guys, so now I have my light mask and my shadow mask in. And now what I have to do is I have to just distribute my values. So now that we have the linear structure established, we have our local value established, now I have my separation of light part and dark part. All I have to do is distribute my 1 through 5 values. So now we can start to think about our light logic principles and what's important with that. So one of the rules that I want to get down is I want to get down my highlight. I want to establish that. That way I have my lightest lights in the place that I need to have it. And then I'm going to establish some of my darker areas like my core or even the pit area where the object of the sphere and the table meet, no light is hitting. So I'm going to start with that because I want to still focus on not only distribute my values, but I also want to focus on distributing those light logic principles. So right now I have my highlight in and the actual shape for that highlight. I erased some of that the graphite out. I'm coming into the pit that's right here. So this is where the table and the object meet. There's no light that hits down here. I'm thinking about edges as well as I'm doing this. So I know that this is possibly going to be a sharp edge that's here. Our cast shadow normally starts with a sharp edge. And then it starts to, it's sharp and hard at the beginning. And then it slowly starts to fuzz out. So it's like sharp, some firm lines. Still thinking about sharp lines where I need them. Also thinking about those values, so I'm getting into some 5s if I can. And you also want to build up to those really, really dark values. I want to keep this quite fuzzy, but not extremely fuzzy. I want to compare the sharpness of this to the sharpness of this side of my cast shadow, which is sharp, but it's not as sharp as this. So in my cast shadow, I'm playing with values of 5, 4, and possibly 3 if I need to. But those are the values that I'm dealing with right now. I'm using a kind of circular motion because, circular line, because I want this to be fuzzy. You know, I don't want to come in really hard. So sometimes what I do, I'll come in with a sponge and just try to really soften just a little bit more. And now I'm coming in with my mechanic eraser, which allows me to make particular line work while I'm erasing. So I can get that line even more fuzzy. So right now I need to darken this. Because this is in shadow and we don't want any, we want to deal with these values in our shadow. I'm looking at the subtleties that's in this calf shadow. Alright, so now I have my calf shadow in. I want to come in and also get my core. So, your core is going to change and its width is going to, it's basically going to contract and expand. So it's not going to be one consistent core around the sphere. There's going to be areas where the core is going to be thin and it's going to widen up and it's going to probably get thin and widen up, and you have to really slow down and pay attention to what that core is doing. And normally also when we have reflected light, it's normally not a crescent shape. It's more of a light that's more in probably this area than anything. But you still want to pay attention to, okay, where is my reflected light? Where is that at? So I'm going to start with getting in my core. So now I have an idea of where my core is, and I just want to come in and just darken it some more. So I'm just going to cross hatch. and I'm cross-hatching with the form. Coming back in with my new 600. So when I think about my core, there's areas where it's really dark, there's areas where it's not as dark. So I want to come in and get some darker areas that I'm seeing. So another thing that I want to think about is the rule of light logic. Light logic, we've already started establishing some of the rules. So the rules that we've established so far is our highlight. We have our shadow edge. We have a core shadow. We have our reflected light and like a pit that's here. One of the main rules is, and this is the rule that you need to stick to, and it's very, very important to always remember, reflected light should not be lighter than what's happening in the midtones. So I need to darken this because technically this is in shadow. So I need to darken it and make it darker than what's happening in my midtone. So I'm going to go ahead and go over with a layer. You might see me do more layers, but I'm going to go over it with a layer to darken it back up because right now this value and this value looks very much the same, and we don't want that. We want this part of the shadow mask to remain in the shadow mask, but it needs to be lighter than our core. Also, just a bit just to talk more about edges. As you can see, this is a sharp edge. It gets very fuzzy and almost broken up in this area. It's a little firm here. I kind of have a lost edge that's here because I'm blending in my cast shadow with my actual sphere. I mean, if I want to, I can come in and darken it and make it a little bit more sharp. I kind of don't. I see it on my actual object a little bit sharper down here. And then it's clear, but I think I'd rather it be just a little bit more fuzzier because I want to play, not so much play, I want to utilize the idea of this economy of line, having these different types of lines of sharp edges or different types of soft edges, textured edges, implied edges. All of this is very important to really think about when you're rendering. So now that I have that in, I'm going to switch over to some lighter pencils because I feel like this mid-tone, it can get a little bit darker, but I don't want to get it too dark. And I'll switch over if I need to a little bit more. So I'm getting in some darker mid-tones. And I'm just allowing myself to squint down and just see where do I feel like it's darker. So I'm going to be playing with these values that are here. Those values that are in the center. squinting down, just trying to make sure I'm getting these values dark enough. Coming in with a kneaded because I kind of want to just lighting up some areas around that highlight. Coming in with a hard pencil, like an H pencil, because I want to darken this area, but I don't want it to get too dark. And because pencils that are harder, they tend to just blend some of the graphite that you have down, or if you're doing charcoal, it blends it down. but or blends it in, but it doesn't allow you to get that dark. I'm going to come in and darken just a little bit around this highlight, because I want a little bit of just a simultaneous contrast type thing. I want to make what's around it just a little bit darker so it stands out. So I'm going to play with a simultaneous contrast. So normally when we're dealing with a sphere, what's happening on the light side, normally our background is just a little bit darker. What's happening on our shadow side, the background or table ground, is a little bit lighter. So I kind of want to play with that, like, because I really want to push that light is hitting. I'm pushing some of this background into my sphere because I'm just playing with those edges, and once again Coming in with my heart. Lift just a little bit of this up. And I also just want to come in and redefine, because I lost edges, which I'm fine with, but I want to kind of come in and push and pull and redefine some of these things. Alright guys, so I just don't want this video to be longer than what it is. It's already an hour long. But you get an idea for how to apply value. So first step, we started with our linear structure. Second step, we went in and established our value, our light logic for our value. Let me get it together. My brain rendering. So the first step was linear structure. Our second step was our local value. And then our third step was separating light part from dark part. And in most cases, if you have a white sphere, you would go right into separating light part from dark part. Because we had a red sphere, I went in establishing that local value first, and then I went in and I separated light part from dark part. Then you want to go into thinking about your light logic principles, meaning highlight, midtone, shadow edge, core shadow, reflected light, pit. And the pit is where the object and the ground meets. And then you think about your cast shadow. You're pushing and pulling your light logic principles as well as your value distributions. So we have a value range of 1 through 5. So I have to figure out, okay, where's my highlight? We know that that's value 1. I have to figure out, okay, where is my midtone values, which is 2 and 3, where I'm going to place that. Then you have to think about, okay, where do I place my darkest darks? So we know that the core is going to get pretty dark. We know that pit's probably going to be a value 5 because it's going to be our darkest dark. I need reflected light, so my reflected light probably should be about a 4. We want to make sure our reflected light is darker than anything that's going on in our mid-tones. That's very, very important. Another thing is that you want to keep in mind what's happening with that cast shadow. There's a lot of different values that are happening where we move into a 5 and then we possibly move into some 4s, possibly even some 3s in some areas. So you want to think about that. Another thing that you want to think about that's very, very important once you start to distribute your light logic principles as well as distributing your values, you're balancing edges. So your edges can range from hard edges, soft edges, firm edges, sharp edges, or lost edges. So as you can see, I have some hard edges, some fuzzy edges, some lost edges that are happening. You want to have that economy of edges, soft edges where I need it. Sometimes with some cast shadows, but I don't really see it in cast shadows. Sometimes in our core shadow, which I don't really see it, sometimes you'll have some harder edges, which I don't really see much in this sphere. It's very, very soft, but you could come in with a little bit of a hard edge somewhere and it can fuzz out or it gets softer as we move. But you want to make sure that you're paying attention to what you're actually seeing. That's what's important, is paying attention to these things. Because we're drawing from observation, and when you're drawing from observation, you're really just trying to capture what you're actually seeing. So these are the 6 steps that we're going to be going through when it comes to getting down our sphere. Hopefully this helps you guys and it helps anybody out there to actually watch this video. I really want to make sure that students understand that you're juggling a lot. You're juggling a lot. There's a lot of eggs in your basket that you're juggling when you're rendering. You just don't want to go in rendering and not knowing or understanding what you're doing and know that there's steps to it. So you want to think of it in the way of step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6. And of course, those steps are going to move around, but understand that this is what you're juggling. So hopefully this helps. Thank you guys for tuning in. Once again, it's another sphere video, but I think it's a little bit more broken down and it's a little bit more understandable when it comes to how you're going to apply value to the sphere. And this is very important for every other object as well. So I'll see you guys in the next video. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day wherever you're at, and I will talk to you later. See you later. Bye.